Welcome, fifth graders, to the next step in this project. So we are looking at a piece of foam now, um, which it will be helpful if you put your name on the back with permanent marker. And it's really important. The reason we use permanent marker is that we don't want to push into the foam. Where a pen, we use it and it only works if we put pressure down. That's going to come up again later on in today's lesson. So on the other side is my design, which I have gone over the lines now probably 5, 6, 7 times. And I would say every one of my lines are very nice and deep. And the areas that you see that are white are high and flat. And that's really important. So with that said, the next step is the actual printing. So printing means transferring something onto another thing and being able to make multiple copies of that. So think of this as a stamp, and we're going to be stamping this onto 15 to 20 sheets of paper. Okay. Now, normally we would use ink, but with me not knowing if I'm going to be here each day, the next step, we're going to be using washable marker. And what's neat about this is that you can do this at home. You don't need printing ink to make your own type of things. And this styrofoam you can make out of meat trays. So like the styrofoam that comes with hamburger or certain things from the grocery store, just cut out the flattest part and you can make things like this at home. And you can print using washable markers. Okay, so to get started, you're going to want to put your name on 15 sheets of white paper. I'm going to do probably 2, but your name will be on one side. You're going to print on the opposite side. Next, just like the permanent marker, we're using these washable markers. You have to pick one color. So you'll see in a little bit, I have lots and lots and lots and lots of different colors. You are picking one, and that one color is what you're doing every one of your prints with. So you can't mix and match, use this color and that color. We'll do a fun print at the end, but for the 15 that we need, you're using one color. So why do we use washable markers? Because washable comes out when washed, right? So we're going to put black marker on here and we're going to wet the paper down, and the washable marker is going to come off of the styrofoam and stick onto the wet paper. So the most important thing to realize with this is that when you are adding the marker to the styrofoam, we do not want to push down hard. Okay, we are adding it in a way that we are being very, very, very gentle to the foam, not pushing down into the foam. Okay, your hands, because maybe they're sweaty or greasy, we don't want to touch the foam very much. And if you touch it right now while the marker is wet, it will take the marker off of your foam. So we got to be very careful. So we want to add a nice even layer to this. You'll notice I'm adding a second coat just to see if it would stick. And because I noticed that it could get darker. So depending on the color, you might have to do the same thing. Just make sure that all of your edges all are good. So if you were listening, I said that we need 15 prints, but you'll probably have to make about 20 of these because not all of them are going to turn out. In fact, the one that I'm doing might not turn out. What's important is that when you wet the paper, you're going to want a wet paper toweling. And this might only work for 1 or 2 prints. This right now is obviously not dripping. And I'm actually probably going to wipe it down a little bit more. When we go over the paper, we want to see that it's dampening the paper. And if it's dry, it's not going to dampen it enough. And this is not going to stick to our paper. Too much water and all of this will spread everywhere and it'll look like a blurry transfer. So I'm going to get up right now, which doesn't help this video, but I'm going to get a little bit more water on my paper toweling. It is also important that you have another paper toweling. And we have 2 different kinds in the room. I would use the white one to make sure that your hands are always dry, and then a wet one to wet the paper down. If your hands are wet and you touch this, then it is going to smear and come off. So I'm going to go wet this down a little bit more, and then I'll come back and print. All right, so now you can see that it's almost too wet. And so if it's shiny, that's going to soak our paper. But on the other side of my paper toweling, I have a lot of paper toweling here. On the other side, it's dry. So I'll kind of use that to like squeeze and it'll absorb some of that extra water. All right. So how we do this is we kind of want to set things up so that we are able to work right away. Once you go over this with the paper toweling, you got to kind of work quick. So I'm going to start at the top and I'm going to quickly move over the top. Now carefully take this, and once it hits the paper, we don't want it to move. That's the hard part. So a lot of people will smear it or they'll move their styrofoam. Now what we want to do is kind of carefully rub this from this side. Ink is sticky, so if I was doing this with ink, I'd just be able to lift the paper up and flip it over and rub it from the other side. I can't do that with the styrofoam because it's not sticking to the paper. It's just hopefully transferring. This will make a great video when this doesn't turn out. But now if we take it off, there we go. We now have a print. Okay, so that water, right? It hasn't soaked my paper. It just dampened it. Okay, dampened it enough that most of the marker that I put on here transferred onto this piece of paper. Okay, so I can leave this off in a pile, and then every time I print, I need to go over this again. So I'm adding another very soft, very gentle layer of marker. Okay, and every time, if you think you need to, wet down your paper toweling. It sometimes works better if this marker is given a little time to dry too. So getting up and re-wetting your paper toweling, you don't need to get new paper toweling each time, but just re-wetting it will help you out. I have 2 different sizes of the paper too. We're going to be cutting these out, so it doesn't matter the size of the paper that you get. What matters, obviously, is the actual print. So you'll notice this one is a little bit skinnier. That's all I'm talking about. It still fits the print or the foam, so that's what's important. I'll put this off to the side, kind of filling. We'll see. I probably should go wet it down again, but I'm not going to. We'll see how well this prints. If you know that it's not as wet as it was for the first one, then sometimes going over it. So you'll notice I have 2 fingers here at the top. I'm pushing down kind of hard, wiping that. I could wipe it again. When the paper gets too wet, it wants to fold on you. So that's, again, where it's really important to have it touch the paper and not move it. But also working quickly, because you only get, this only works if the paper is wet. On the first day you do this, you're probably going to have a lot of mistakes, a lot of prints that don't work. So if you get one that doesn't work, think about how long did it take before you put the water on and then put the foam onto it. If it took a long time, then that's probably why. If it's blurry, then you probably moved the styrofoam. All right, maybe you didn't press down hard enough or long enough. So I actually like that one better. So it might have been because I went over it twice that the paper was a little bit wetter, but that's definitely a little bit darker. So what you're trying to do is get 15 similar prints. So 15 that look very similar and alike one another. Okay? So same color, you have to decide on day one. And then the biggest thing is not touching this a lot with your oily hands and not pushing hard when you use your washable marker. Going on there nice and smooth, not pushing into the foam, because people will push hard and then they'll end up with grooves from the marker. All right, there's my long 11-minute video, but you now have the next probably 4 class periods to work on this. So good luck, everyone.